working with Kasey and Lindsey, and I'm delighted to introduce them to you. They are two of our PCV affiliated Wayfinders. That's how I've come to know them. Kasey is the head doula of Doula Care for Dying, and Lindsey is the doula with Journey with Compassion. Even though they're not really primarily talking about the Wayfinder Network today, that's how I've gotten to know them and have thoroughly appreciated their commitment and energy to the people they serve. And I know they'll have some wonderful insights today about what is a death doula. So, Kasey and Lindsey, it's all yours.
All right, I'm going to do
so
a little
much.
screen sharing.
While she shares a screen, I just wanted to welcome, we have a lot of fellow doulas and wayfinders on the call today. Welcome you guys. It's such a passionate group of individuals around the state of Vermont that really care about end of life issues and choice. So thanks for being here, and thanks for everybody else who's joined us.
And can you guys just confirm if you're seeing the exit matters?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for having us here. Jen, thank you for the introduction and the overview. I can no longer see the chat because I am sharing my screen. So if questions pop up in there, I'm going to ask that Jen or Lindsey bring those to our attention. We'll repeat them so that for individuals who, are seeing this or can't see the chat either, know what the question is that we're going through. But yeah, today we're going to talk to you about the role of an end-of-life doula. This is Lindsey and I. So as Jen said, I'm the head doula of Doula Care for Dying. So I work down here in Southern Vermont. And then Lindsey, I'll let you talk a little bit about yourself.
Same thing. I'm a end-of-life doula and wayfinder that works in Northern Vermont, Journey with Compassion.
And so today we're going to be talking about understanding end-of-life doulas, what we do, why end-of-life doulas are available, why you might want the support of a doula in addition to your care team, whether that circle and community of care is your family and loved ones, it includes hospice, your medical providers, maybe your church group, and what the doula role is and when that might be helpful to folks, right? Because not everyone needs a doula, but also not everyone knows this kind of support is available. And so we're here to talk a little bit about that today. Doulas are trained professionals. They provide non-medical support. So we are not prescribers or treatment providers. Also holistic support for families during the dying process, right? And that can start pretty early on when folks are considering what their end of life might look like and putting plans in place. And also sort of concurrent with transitioning from what might be a disease process into the dying process itself and sort of doing that work in tandem.
So some definitions of what is an end-of-life doula, because we do wear many different hats and, work in different lanes. Some people are very much about advanced planning. Some people really specialize in vigils, but overarching, we're modeled on a birth doula. Birth doulas help people come into the world gracefully, and we help people exit. We provide practical support as well as emotional support. Sometimes it's the logistics of it, and sometimes it's just, listening and letting a person talk about their thoughts and feelings and process through things. As Kasey mentioned, we are non-medical care. We're always encouraging people to have good communication with their medical team and their hospice team. We are companions, we're advocates. Sometimes maybe there's an oversight or, we need to advocate for someone who maybe they got a PICC line installed, but the pain pump still hasn't come. So we call up hospice and say, can you guys find out why this hasn't come yet? That's an example from my week last week. We work with the whole family, and sometimes it's a circle of friends if the person doesn't have a lot of family they're in touch with. We try to provide a seamless circle of care around a person. We guide people through the dying process. Sometimes that's education ahead of time about things to come, and sometimes it's answering questions in the moment. We have an active presence in the vigil, and the vigil meaning the active dying phase at the end of someone's life. Some doulas specialize in this, and they can help you pre-plan, what are the sights and sounds and smells and comforting things that you would like? Who are people that you would like to visit or not visit during your vigil? So we can help people plan that. We can help create an atmosphere of calm for a peaceful ending, and do comfort care at bedside. Maybe that's tending to people's skin or their mouth as they can be dry. And then we support the family in early grief. So bereavement work, and also making sure that they're linked in with their hospice's bereavement benefits as well.
So I'll talk briefly about some doula specializations. Not every doula offers the same services, and some do specialize in particular kinds of work. This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but it is sort of representative of some of the things that you might see if you were looking for an end-of-life doula. So some doulas help with advanced planning, helping folks understand what you can plan for, sort of what is available at the buffet, what are some of the questions that I might want to consider, write down what I would like, and communicate that to the loved ones who might need to be implementing for me if I am ever in a situation where I can't speak for myself. Legacy work is another thing that doulas work with folks that they might be considering. How do you want to be remembered? Are there particular things that you want to make sure are captured? Have you been writing a book for years that you want to make sure is done before the end of your life? Are there certain messages that you want to send to your loved ones after you have passed? Are there family mementos and things that you want captured? Is there legacy that you want in the form of a financial gift or some sort of contribution to your community? Sort of walking through all of the elements of what is your legacy. Natural burial is another thing that doulas might specialize in. So as our technology changes, as we learn more and more about what burial and cremation does to the environment, natural burial has become more and more popular among folks. But however, it's not completely mainstream yet. And so you might come across a doula who is really focused on natural burial and supports people who want this ecological option, but don't necessarily know what that means, what that might make different about the dying process, and what they select for themselves as far as funeral and things like that. Bedside music. Lindsey, actually, I'm going to let you talk about this since you have a specialty in bedside music.
Sure. Bedside music is an option for some doulas, or sometimes hospices offer that, and you could talk to a doula about planning. So your doula doesn't have to have a music degree. You can plan music for the vigil. You can say, these songs are really important to me. Please play them for me, or please play them over my graveside service or at a memorial or celebration of life. And then there are people like myself who have music degrees, and so sometimes I will record a song for someone that they especially want, or bring my keyboard or my frame drum and my voice, and I sing for people at various points in the process. So, and Alex, I do see your question in the chat. We'll get to that right at the end of this slide.
Others incorporate holistic modalities into their practice. They might focus on community education. So getting out into the community and offering resources and information so that people have the information they need in order to plan and have a really well-supported death. You could argue that what Lindsey and I are doing here today is part of that work. Vigil work specifically, so being with families and communities of care at the bedside when someone is actively dying, and of course more. There are lots of different specialties that doulas come across, which is why it can be really important to find a doula that's a good fit for you. And we'll talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's a question in the chat, and I'll just add too, with holistic modalities, and this goes with Alex's question, does one hire a death doula privately, or are doulas part of a hospice, or is it mixed approaches? So with holistic modalities too, sometimes hospitals have programs. People that offer Reiki, for instance, is one example of a holistic modality, and some doulas specialize in that as well. Death doulas are privately hired. Sometimes a hospice may reach out to us. We have relationships with hospices in our areas, and sometimes they see where a doula could be a good fit or a person is asking for a doula, and we work hand in hand with hospice. But it is a private pay situation. Insurance companies don't cover our services. But doulas are all across the board. Some people like Kasey and myself work sliding scale. So that's all in just looking for a doula that's a good fit for your situation.
And I know that people on this call are sort of from all over the country. Some more urban areas with larger hospice and hospital systems do actually have doulas that they hire on their staff. And so, in addition to having sort of volunteers as part of their hospice, there might be a doula that you can work with. But in most cases, hospice and doulas are separate. You might be working with a doula that is separate, but they are part of like the care team.
Do you see Valerie has her hand raised for a question?
Yeah, Valerie.
I have a question about someone who's undergoing voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. What
Mhm.
is the role of the doula in making that person comfortable during what can be an attenuated period of time?
That's a great question, Valerie. I'll say a few things and then Kasey will say a few things because I'm actually right in the middle of this with one of my clients. Part of a doula's role is to help the person plan their VSED, we call it voluntary stop eating and drinking, looking at how they want their vigil to be, so vigil planning, and also looking at who's going to be there, the care team rotation, because it's really not something that you want to do by yourself or with only one other person because it can be a long process. So a doula is great for helping with the logistical planning of who's going to come in to support and when. A supply list. There's all kinds of things like that. And then being there to answer questions with the family. But again, it's sort of helping to mobilize the team of care around the person. Kasey, what do you have to add for that one?
Yeah, so Valerie, I like to think of a doula in a situation like that as being an experienced companion, right? So you're going to have your medical team, which is probably going to be palliative care or hospice care. That's going to be really focused on some of the physical symptoms and alleviate them, pain management, how we look at all of the medications a person is taking, what they might need to take, stop taking, and the order of how things are going to go for the VSED process. When are you going to stop eating? When are you going to stop drinking? How exactly that might work, right? So that's sort of the medical side of this. The doula side of this as an experienced but not expert companion is walking folks through this process, thinking about the emotional pieces of it. So when someone experiences some of the normal side effects like confusion and they ask for food and water of the loved ones that are around them, did we have a conversation ahead of time about how we're going to respond to that? How we're going to offer to the individual, you're going through VSED right now. If you were to take a drink, that's going to stop the VSED process. Is that something that you want to do? Do you want me to do something to help address the symptom? It sounds like your mouth is dry. Why don't we try X, Y, and Z measures, right? So a doula is there to help take some of the pressure off the family that is there, boots on the ground every day, offer their experience, and also help with the communication piece, right? So because a doula is not emotionally experiencing this the same way family and friends and loved ones are, there's like the part of your brain that is turned on as the doula so that you can help make sure that communication between the people who are the boots on the ground and the medical folks that are involved are all on the same page about the care so that that is as seamless as possible.
But you don't, let me just follow up. You don't take the place of the need to have somebody there to put ointment on their lips if they're dry or things like that. They still need to have a pretty much full-time care team in addition to your role.
So you're going to talk to each individual doula about how much and how little of that work that they do, because it varies from person to person, how much hands-on, like bedside attendant type work that they do. Some will say, yes, I am a very hands-on person and I do help with things like mouth care or transferring from a chair into a bed, things like that. And some will say, these are my parameters. I do this kinds of care, but I don't do that kind of care. So it can be very particular.
Thank
Mhm.
you.
You're welcome.
And Serena, I see your question here that your understanding is that it's not legal to charge for doula care after death and during vigil. I can help clarify that a little bit. Doulas can charge for their services prior to death and during vigil. What can't be charged for is any type of after death body care, or helping with the disposition, because that goes into funeral director territory. Some doulas are funeral directors and can do that and charge a fee. Other people, like myself, make it very clear when I'm helping someone with a green burial plan, for instance, that if they need help afterwards, that's beyond my contract and that's all pro bono work. So, but vigil care, yes, doulas can charge for that. That does not infringe upon funeral director territory there. Marissa, we're going to get to your question about training programs in just a minute. Yeah. All right. Is this my slide, Kasey? I've lost track. Okay.
okay.
So here's just a reflection from an advanced planning client. You created a comfortable atmosphere for our conversation, making it feel more like a casual discussion rather than an organized checklist. The pace was relaxed and the language was straightforward, and I left with confident enthusiasm to discuss my wishes with my family and complete the task list independently.
So a little bit of historical context. Why do we have end-of-life doulas? How did this come about, for example? So end-of-life care has evolved over time, shifting from something that really was family-centered and was happening at home to institutional care in hospitals. And that transition really happened in the 20th century, right? So it was driven by advancements in medical technology as we have been better able to care for people at end of life and oftentimes extend their life. A lot of end of life care has started happening more and more often in hospitals, in rehab facilities, in nursing homes, and things like that. However, there are some trade-offs that come with a solely medicalized approach to death. And as a result of that, we saw the emergence of the hospice movement in the 1960s, right? So Dame Cicely Saunders emphasized that we really should find a way to get back to a holistic patient-centered care model that reflects the dignity in the dying process. And so what we've seen most recently is a death positive movement, which is encouraging conversations about death and how you can incorporate non-medical support into the dying process and into the whole period of end of life. So doulas are really offering emotional, spiritual, and practical guidance to the dying and their loved ones. It is not a replacement for the other things that we have available, and it isn't necessary in every single context. But when we have something like 70% of people in the United States saying that they would really be most comfortable dying at home, and we're not always seeing that happen, or we're seeing some limitations where families say, my hospice is wonderful, my nurse that comes in is absolutely great. You know, we love the support of the aides that come in, and still as a family, as a circle of care, we are finding it challenging to manage death at home. This is another person, another member of the community that can come forward and support those families.
So things vary from training program to training program, and we'll get into that in just a moment because there's a few questions in the chat. But overarching, what connects all doulas, no matter what training and what professional background and soft skills they bring to the table from other aspects of their life, is that a doula offers emotional support, offers practical support, vigil presence, and I think we've spoken to those elements, but grief witness, I think, is another important aspect of this mix too.
So this is just another reflection from a family. Words cannot fully express our most sincere gratitude for the compassion and care you provided to our beloved dad, husband, and to us. You made a daunting journey much easier and relieved all of us of added stressors that otherwise we would have had to endure.
So here we are at training and certification programs, and some people may see that I added in the chat that I'm preparing a slide deck and a group. I've had a lot of people asking. So it's called Discerning Your Doula Path. I know there's a lot of people that are doula curious and trying to figure out if it's something they can do in their life. So I'm not training doulas. Kasey and I both have gone through some really excellent training programs, but my intention with this is just to help people sort of discern which path to take and how to specialize or how to launch. So there's many different certification programs. There's not an overarching centralized licensure process like what the nurses have to go through. It can be helpful to interview different doulas and ask about their training experience to find a good fit. Some of the programs are online, some of them are in person, some of them are hybrid. Some programs, the material drops, it's called asynchronous, where you work through it in your own time. Some of them have live training if you feel like you need sort of bumpers and accountability on your schedule. And I think we have some slides on some of our experience in the two different programs that we did.
Before I talk about the INELDA, so International End of Life Doula Association training, which is the training that I did, I do want to mention, so I have dropped a little note in the chat. I prepared a PDF for the Northeast Death Doula Network. It's a network that Lindsey and I are both a part of. But it is a list of questions that families can ask to potential doulas to help them figure out if a doula is a good fit for them. And I share that freely to anyone who might want to find a good fit doula. So this is not about hiring somebody like from that particular network. That is wherever you are in any region, how do you identify someone that is a good fit for you? And training is a part of this. So the INELDA doula training, it's 15 hours of on-demand pre-work. So the training itself, at the time that I took the training, it has been getting more comprehensive over time, which is wonderful. But it was work that you did before the course even started, readings that you had to do, videos that you watched to prepare for the class itself. The class met twice a week. It was 30 hours of live classroom training. I happened to do my training via Zoom with 2 live instructors and all of my classmates going into breakout rooms. And so it was very much like a college course, but done online because I trained during COVID times and could not train in person. And so our professors, if you will, would give the lecture for the day, and they would put us into breakout rooms to practice the skills that we were learning on each other. The emphasis was very much that as like the doula student, you were practicing these skills and exercises for the first time with other doulas, not on people who needed your support and services. After the in-class work was done, there was 2 hours of on-demand post-work. So again, more videos and reflections that we had to do, in addition to essays that had to be submitted to our instructors, verifying that we understood the course content. We were not graded, but it was pass-fail, if you would. It included experiential exercises, a comprehensive manual. There's also a certification option directly through this doula training program. And it covered basic knowledge and tools of how to work with people at the end of life.
So I will also pitch in here that the network that Kasey was referring to, she's much too humble. She established this network, and it's wonderful. So if there's someone who needs a referral in one area and we mostly specialize in the Northeast, but we have a lot of connections all around the country. So that's one way, and we probably should have put a slide in here on other ways to find doulas, like through the NEDA, National End of Life Doula Association, et cetera. There's a lot of listings there. But anyway, I attended the UVM doula training program, University of Vermont. This was an 80+ hour online classroom that had materials over 8 weeks. We were asynchronous, meaning the materials dropped, but we had a live portal where we had to make posts and practice responding to people. We had 3 live Zooms. We had lots of homework projects where we had, like, for instance, I got together with someone and videoed them doing a legacy interview, a life review video. There were videos and assignments and projects. There were quizzes and discussions. We were graded, and you come out of it with a professional credentialing certificate. And there's a post-program community too, where we can make referrals to one another and ask questions, et cetera. So it was a wonderful program. And I think whatever program that you decide on is really just a jumping off point. There's no, it could be a really long, because there's a lot of different specialties and sub areas as well. So it gives you your core knowledge for going forward, and then you can choose how you want to use that in the world. Maybe it's just with friends and family. So.
Yeah, I got to know a lot of my classmates in my program, just because of the style of the learning, because we did so many breakout sessions. And I discovered that the people doing this training were people who just wanted to know so they could better support their friends and family in their community. A lot of religious leaders, so pastors and things like that, who wanted to just add this to their toolkit, therapists, people who already worked in healthcare, doctors, hospice nurses, like using this as continuing education for themselves. They were just seeing this as, these are great life skills to have that I want to add to my toolkit. And so there's certainly lots of use cases for the doula role. Do the certification programs require continuing education units? Oh, okay. So Lindsay has answered that in the chat, but there aren't continuing ed units required at this point, but most of us love to do it anyway. It's why things like the Northeast Death Doula Network exist. And it does seem to be trending in that direction. So this is an emerging field. The organizations like the UVM Doula Training Program and NELDA, they have only been around for about 10 years. And so as this profession grows and professional organizations grow and training opportunities grow, we are seeing more and more of a move towards certification and towards things that look like licensure. And that seems to be where things are trending right now. Valerie, I see your hand.
I have a question, Kasey. How do we get our hands on your questionnaire for interviewing doulas? Maybe Jen would send it out to all of us on the call, or you would give us
Yeah, so
a
I dropped my
PDF link or something?
Yeah, so I dropped my email in the chat. I am happy to send that PDF link to anybody who wants it. So, and the slides at the end are going to share my information as well. So even folks on the recording, you don't have to listen to me say doulacarefordying@gmail. You can see it displayed later. So the spelling is there. You don't have to worry about it. But yes, that PDF goes out freely. You can also find it on my website. But I am happy to share that information with anyone who needs it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So collaborating with medical professionals, doulas are a complement to your medical team. It is not a competition, and we address non-medical needs. That's really our wheelhouse. So the doula role is about ensuring consistency in end-of-life care through effective communication, right? There can be this too many cooks in the kitchen sort of mentality sometimes. But also, we don't want folks to be stretched too thin, and we don't want families to feel overburdened with logistics, right? And when I say family, I am using a really comprehensive definition of family. I mean, whoever is in your community of care and you have identified as family. Legal relationship doesn't really come into play here. And so a doula is helping make sure that communication is happening effectively, that the client, the person who is dying, their needs are clearly understood and communicated consistently.
Yeah. And for example, I have an advanced care green burial client right now. They're not actively dying, but I'm trying to set them up for good communication in the future by helping them with their green burial plan and their celebration of life plan, saying, for their family, it's a gift to their family. Here's who to call when I pass. Here's who to invite to celebration. Here's all the information in one place. So benefits of an end-of-life doula. We really are trying to enhance the quality of life during the dying process because you're still alive. We want you to live fully up until that last moment, that last breath. That's a Cicely Saunders, our founding hospice matriarch, we can call her. So we want to enhance the quality of your life. And we want to give you personalized experience. We want you to have all the choices in front of you so you can make a fully informed decision that really reflects your values and your wishes. And we want to provide emotional support, guidance, resources, and sometimes other modalities like music or Reiki or essential oils to help reduce anxiety and fear associated with death.
So one doula specialty we have not talked about, but we're going to touch on just briefly because Jen mentioned it before, is doulas who are also working with Patient Choice in Vermont as wayfinders. So in the sort of doula hat, being a wayfinder role, this is some of the things that we do in particular, right? So helping patients navigate Act 39, planning and paperwork support. So, hey, these are all of the really important things that you are going to need to have planned and the paperwork you're going to need to get through the process. There are some state forms that you bring with you to doctor's appointments that get filled out, just making sure folks have all of that information in one place, right? And that they are prepared for all of their appointments, not doing it for you, but guiding you for how to get through this process. We also talk about parallel planning, right? So as a doula, my goal is always to understand what my client's values and wishes are. And parallel planning means if this process doesn't go the ideal way and there is any sort of change, how do we continue working in alignment with your values? So maybe you're not pursuing medical aid in dying for a whole host of reasons, right? Because this process is really centered on choice. So maybe you've decided not to move forward with this process, or things have changed with your health and you no longer qualify in the way that you did. Travel becomes difficult if you're an out-of-state person and you've decided not to move forward with the process because being in Vermont is not a good fit anymore. Parallel planning is about making sure there is infrastructure in place to make sure that you are well supported and that what is happening moving forward for you is still in alignment with your values, that you don't feel like the rug got ripped out from under you because things didn't go exactly the way that you wanted them initially. We also talk about things like what doctors you're working with, what housing do you have lined up, what is your body disposition plan? So did you plan to be buried at home and now you've traveled to Vermont? What sort of resources do you need so that your body gets back to your home funeral home and is interned the way that you want with the funeral and memorial services that you want? So helping make sure that that process happens, that all of the resources you need are connected to. They also help you prepare for your doctor's appointments. What are the questions that I want to ask? Because, wow, this doctor's appointment feels really important. I've waited several weeks for the appointment. I go in, I answer the doctor's questions. And most of us have had this experience, right? Where we're having a really important conversation and your brain just goes blank. You forget every question you ever had. When you work with a wayfinder that is a doula, oftentimes we'll have conversations where we encourage you to write down what your questions are so that before you leave an appointment, you can sort of reflect back on that list and make sure, did I get all of the information I need to make a good informed decision? We help with coordinating prescription delivery and hospice benefit transfer or travel contracts or whatever that's going to look like. The important thing is this doula is sort of an expert in what the local resources are in their area, and they help you navigate all of those local resources. Yep, some of this is logistical resources, but also they're an emotional support through this process, talking about everything from I'm nervous to talk to my home physician about the fact that I'm making this decision and I want to ask for, my medical records and I want to ask what my prognosis is, but I need someone that I'm going to practice that conversation with because I'm feeling some some concern there, or I want to talk to my family, or I want to write letters to be given to my family after I've passed because I want to be able to share some messages with them. So that's sort of the emotional support piece to this. And then also, we're there on the day that someone takes this medication. I refer to it as Dignity Day, to be a support to that individual and their loved ones.
Yeah, and there's a question in the chat about private pay fee for wayfinders. It's the same as doulas. Each one is unique. Many of them work sliding scale. And yes, that I'm just scanning to see if there's any other questions I missed in the chat. With regard to the comment about this being an emergent field, do you feel there's a growing demand for doula services? I say most definitely. I think the more that the community is educated about what an end-of-life doula is or what a wayfinder is, they become more aware that they have choices for end-of-life care and may want to take advantage of that support. So through Wayfinders, we work with one individual, yes. So on the Patient Choices Vermont website is a listing of some of the Wayfinders. There's several new Wayfinders coming on. I'm not actually physically listed there right now, working behind the scenes, supporting some other Wayfinders. And some of that's going to be updated soon, but yes, you can reach out to those Wayfinders.
We seem to have naturally transitioned into Q&A.
Yes.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to transition the slides so that you just have the contact information I was talking about before. And what we're going to do is Lindsey and I are going to kind of in parallel go back and forth between, we see folks who are raising their hands and we see folks in the chat. So we're going to bounce back and forth answering your questions. Valerie, if it's okay with you, let's move to your question and then we'll bop back over to the chat because Alex, I see you have another question in the
Okay,
chat.
so if you work with somebody who lives alone and is far from family, which
Yes.
is more and more the case,
Yep.
how does it change the way you operate?
As an end-of-life doula, how does that change the way I operate?
Yes, yes.
Yep. So if I'm working with someone, and Lindsey, I'll let you answer this too. If I am working with someone who identifies as I'm an individual that lives alone and, you know, my next of kin as far as family is concerned, my adult children or whoever, they live far away. Okay. One of the first things that we're talking about is what's your community of care look like? Who are the people that you have identified as your village? Who would you want? There's kind of concentric circles, right? So let's say you slipped in your driveway in the winter and you broke your ankle. Who are the people that you think you could rely on first to help you in that situation? Who would take your trash bins down on trash day? Who would pick you up from the hospital, right? You probably have already identified some of this support in your mind. We talk about that and we talk about how that might transition to end of life. We also talk about what your concerns are. What are the things that you are maybe worried that you don't have adequate support for right now? Coaching around what are the conversations that you can have with friends, family, loved ones, and then realistically assessing, okay, where are we potentially seeing some gaps? What resources are available to help bridge those gaps? Some of them are financial, some of them are not. And we go from there. Sometimes the doula, physically being there in your house, taking certain roles, that is part of filling the gaps. But sometimes it has nothing to do with the doula. It has to do with what's already in place.
I think too, sometimes doulas are helping to facilitate conversation. I know whether it's a medical aid in dying case and people want to practice with me what they want to say to their adult children or their friends or family about announcing their plans, or sometimes people want to run by an email that they plan to draft to their kids about their green burial plan, for instance. So we can also be there to support and facilitate conversation. Some doulas are willing to be at a family meeting to help facilitate the conversation or mediate the conversation. So that's another role that we can have in supporting.
I don't think we've seen any other questions in the chat. Emily.
Oh, but I see a hand.
She's muted, does she know?
Sorry about that.
Casey, she
I'm a
probably
little
doesn't
slow
know.
on the
Okay.
Zoom. I just wondered with regard to the specializations that you all mentioned, is there an area where people are more interested in those services than other services? Like is this are some of them more common than others?
Hmm. Do you want to take this, Lindsay, or do you want me to start?
Um, I think it varies. I mean, I have a lot of different specializations, maybe too many irons and too many fires, but I seem to get a wide variety. Uh, right now, for instance, I have someone who's working on a green burial plan with me. I have another person who the social worker from a hospice called because they wanted Reiki and they wanted some of the spiritual supports. That's one slide we didn't have. Sometimes doulas also are willing to be spiritual support, especially if they are not jiving with the particular hospice chaplain, or maybe they're not religious, but they just want someone to help facilitate a ceremony. So sometimes doulas work as celebrants or just helping to plan meaningful things for this sacred spiritual threshold. So I think I see a wide variety of inquiries. Some people just need logistical help. So I think it really varies. I don't think there's like one hot sub area for me that I see anyway. Kasey, what do you think?
Um, there's a combination of things that I've seen. So in my first year as an end-of-life doula, I did 10 community presentations on just what an end-of-life doula was, and then it was sort of open Q&A at the end. And what I learned was each individual community had various different needs. Like it seemed like every single time I did one of those conversations, there was a different topic we talked about pretty much the entire Q&A. And so some of the doula specializations might be, what is the gap in the community that that doula is serving? And so that is what you get the most requests for. I happen to be affiliated with like Center for Solace, and I'm a volunteer for them. Center for Solace is a non-medical hospice here in Southern Vermont. They work with bedside singers. They have an after-death body care program. And so they really provide a lot of strong, holistic support for the dying process, which means when I get referrals in that area, it tends to be for much more specific things that are not available through medical and non-medical hospice. I get people who are asking for support for voluntary stopping eating and drinking, and I'm a bedside support person for that. Or I get people who want to work on particular legacy projects and they want me to come in for several hours, multiple days a week to help accomplish those things. Whereas in other communities, maybe where there is a nursing home or something like that, I have worked with an individual to help galvanize their community of care, to lay their plans. And it's really about advanced planning because, to Valerie's question earlier, this is someone who doesn't have family that lives locally, but they really want to stay in their home environment and not go to a hospital. And so they want to know, how do I do that? How do I make sure all of these roles are communicated? And that was what we focused on in our work together. So I have found it to be very location specific and based on the other resources in the regions.
Okay. Could I ask you two more brief questions? First, how long have you all been doing this? And, at what point did you kind of feel more comfortable with it as like a new doula? Because I'm just wondering, I'm planning to sign up for the UVM course in February and move forward with this. And I'm just like, I'm wondering, because I don't feel that it's really necessarily outside of my realm of comfort, but it's obviously something that I don't have experience with yet. So I'm just wondering how long it takes to kind of like find your death legs.
Could I ask before Lindsay and Kasey jump in to answer that question? We'll stay as long as anybody wants to ask, kind of individualized questions. We are happy to do that. I also just want to acknowledge that it is just past 1 o'clock. So if we could kind of wrap up the main program, and then we'll stay on, Emily, with you and with anybody else who wants to ask some more personal questions, if that's okay. All right. So first of all, thank you to Lindsay and Kasey for an amazing presentation.
Yes.
I'm going to point out that Patient Choices Vermont is a privately funded organization led, as I said, by a very small paid staff and composed largely of volunteers. So if you enjoyed today's presentation and would like to support us, we would love to have that support. And I have put that link in the chat. Someone had also just asked if the recording will be sent to participants. Yes, it will. And it will also be available on the Patient Choices website at our video links. So I just put that in the chat as well. Earlier, I put a link to our web form for general inquiries. So if you want to follow up on something that you didn't necessarily feel comfortable asking in front of other people, but you'd like a more private consultation, please go ahead and reach out to us through our website. And I've also just put my email back in the chat so that you have that in case you need to reach out and ask any questions or give us any feedback afterwards. So thank you all so much for joining us today. And as I said, I am not rushing anybody off. We're going to go right back to Emily's questions, and we'll invite anybody who wants to remain on and ask their own questions as well. I wanted to just do that wrap up for folks who did need to jump at 1 o'clock. So sorry, Emily, go.
No problem. Could you guys answer the question that I had about just experience?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Emily, I trained, I would say for about a year before I ever did a doula. So I did my training and I actually volunteered with 2 different hospices before I ever worked with someone as like a doula client. I did come from a support services role. Like my professional career, I had 10 years in higher education in student support services, working directly one-on-one with students, helping them navigate the big complex environment that is a university to solve their problems. So there was a lot of sort of transferable and parallel skills that I was pivoting into this role. But that said, I think that there is a lot that you can do as far as your training and how you volunteer in your community in a way that feels supported before you ever are working directly with clients. And for me, that was about a year.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was kind of my plan. I was going to do the program and then try to volunteer down at Brattleboro Hospice. So
We should talk. We're in the same area.
yeah, I was going to
gonna
ask
say.
where you were in Southern Vermont. And my other question, before you answer, Lindsay, just so maybe you guys can just move into this, is what is the radius of geographical area that you tend to work in?
I think that varies from person to person, and it's great to know that was going to be my question for you, is where are you? Because we can probably link you up with someone that might be willing to let you do some shadowing, or and some of the programs require that and some don't, but it can be really valuable if you're not feeling confident about just launching on your own at first.
I live in Westminster, but I mean,
Mhm.
Brattleboro is probably the closest
Yeah.
large
I
place to me. So
I think every doula has their own personal radius, and I know where I live is kind of way out, so I tend to drive about an hour and 15 is my general radius, but I've driven further to support people too, because there's not all the services that everybody's looking for here. So I'm up in the, far northeast corner. So
sure.
I've driven down to Brattleboro to support Kasey,
Lindsay
or over
shadowed
to
with me.
yeah, or over to Chittenden County to support new wayfinders. So yeah, it's really kind of up to you.
And then Lindsay, did you volunteer after you completed your program with UVM? You just kind of started?
Yeah. I have background as a home health aide. I've been a music teacher for 26 years. A lot of one-on-one support and deep listening skills that go into that. And you don't have to have all those specialty categories too. That core doula heart, open listening, arriving with no agenda, being with the person where they are at on that particular day and that particular moment. That's really the core of the core of skills that you need. You don't have to be a logistical whiz like Kasey. You can decide. I know a person near me that does it more as a volunteer thing, but she's just really good at just holding space bedside with people. And that's what she does. And it's a beautiful gift for our community. And then I know another doula who was on the call, Trish, is amazing at her advanced planning workshops. So you can kind of decide your niche if, and especially if you're at a point in life where you can't just stop everything and go hold vigil, maybe you want to focus on community education, or maybe you want to focus on advanced planning with people.
Right. Great. Thank you so much. I'm like super excited about this. Kasey, I found out about you through Rachel Lovins.
Yep.
And she's a friend of mine, and we
Oh,
talked about
great.
her going through the program at UVM, and she just said you were a wonderful resource. And I kind of then, like a week after I met with her, this Zoom came up on my email, and I was like, oh, great, this is good timing. So I will definitely email both of you at some point to talk more. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love to get people connected and like expand the support that we have for the dying process. I just think that, you know, it's going to happen for all of us. I really want folks to have a well-supported death, and I want families and circles of care to feel really well supported through that process. So the more that we can get people who are interested in this work connected to each other, sharing ideas and supporting, the better.
Yes.
So
So there's
there's, I'm
oh,
sorry. I'm sorry,
there's
go ahead. Didn't
yeah,
mean, sorry.
there's a question in the chat. I think you're going to say the same thing, Jen, from Betsy about briefly describing the training that a wayfinder receives. And I'll say that we are called wayfinders in Vermont. It's not a term that's used in other states, and that's part of our partnership, our affiliation with Patient Choices Vermont. I know Kasey and I both attended the Academy of Aid in Dying training first, and then most recently Patient Choices Vermont came up with an amazing training program and has brought on several new wayfinders. So maybe Kasey wants to describe that training program that we just had recently.
Or
Actually,
Jen ran
I
the
can jump.
training.
Or
I can
Jen,
jump.
perfect.
So let me acknowledge Betsy Walkerman. You heard me at the very, very beginning of the program mention Dick and Ginny Walters, the folks who founded Patient Choices Vermont back in 2002. Betsy Walkerman is their daughter and has for many years served as the president of the organization, keeping us going, safeguarding Act 39, doing all of that work. And it was only last year that we hired our first full-time executive director, Amy Bruce, whom I've also talked about. She's on the call off camera today. So certainly want to acknowledge Betsy today. Thank you. And thank you for everything that you've done for the organization. And she had said, Jen, can you describe the training that the Wayfinders receive? So as Lindsey and Kasey have said, PCV does have an affiliated network called Wayfinders, who help to support primarily folks who are coming from out of state to exercise medical aid in dying. And we did just complete a 6-week training period. A lot of people donating a lot of time to learn more about the ins and outs of Act 39, the specifics of the process. We have a wonderful medical doctor who's long been an advocate for medical aid in dying, and she's on our board of directors as well, Dr. Diana Barnard. Diana, not sure if you're here, but she did a wonderful job talking about some of the medical aspects of medical aid in dying and the responsibilities of prescribing physicians and how Wayfinders can best work with a family to empower them to work with their physicians and with hospice and with other members of their care team. We talked a lot about hospice. Again, I'll say it for the third time in this presentation. We strongly recommend hospice enrollment for everyone who accesses MAID in Vermont. So talked a lot about how hospice works and how hospice can connect with other folks who are part of someone's support team at the end of their lives. And really, you know, some of the nuts and bolts of the Wayfinder process and how that all works. So Lindsey, Kasey, Betsy, Amy, I don't know if anybody wants to jump in on or off camera or add anything to that, but we all are all kind of proud of the 6 weeks of training that we just did and excited to talk about it. So thank you for the question, Betsy.
We brought together all the established wayfinders that have been doing this work for years, and then a whole crew of new people wanting to continue with this work as well. So it was really a beautiful, coming together to create a stronger network of support. So, and we're so grateful for Patient Choices Vermont helping to do that.
Any other last questions? Just removing the spotlight here.
I see Frederica waving her hand. I think she's trying to unmute, so I'll give you a second to
Go for it. Go
get
for
those
it.
buttons to cooperate.
Okay, I'm unmuted. What I'd like to add is that I sing with a hospice singing group here in the Upper Valley. It's called Evergreen Singers.
Yes.
And in Brattleboro area, there's Hallowell, and all around the state, there are different hospice singing groups. Lately, we had been connected strongly with Bayada, which is here in the Upper Valley, but for some reason, which I think is due to their organization upheavals, they have stopped referring bedside patients to us, and I miss that. So I would ask you, when you're working in your work, if you could recommend or suggest to people if they'd like to have a small group come and sing at their bedside. We are always at the ready for that, and we would love to come. We have a large repertoire of songs, so we appreciate knowing what kind of songs the person would be interested in hearing, if it would be hymns or spirituals or upbeat songs, or any number. We could accommodate and be glad for the recommendation.
We absolutely will spread the word. Yes. All the
Thank you.
hospice choirs are fantastic around the state. So thank you, Frederica.
I think we're at www.evergreensingers.com, something like that. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's a beautiful thing. Thank you. Any other last questions? I mean, this is kind of amazing. We have held well over 30 people for, well past the official closing time of the presentation, and I always think that's a good indicator of the speakers and the topic and the engagement that you all have created. So thank you so much for the presentation today. See, I told you they were great, didn't I tell you? I told you. So Valerie, are you waving, or is that another question? You waving goodbye? All right. Please remember, you've got my email in the chat. You've got Kasey's, you've got Lindsey's, you've got the PCV website, along with our web form that goes to our helpline. So you have plenty of opportunities. If you have questions after the presentation, you have plenty of opportunity to reach out to any of us to ask them, and we are happy to hear from you. And Kasey just suggested, I'm always, in order to put on a monthly program, you need a steady stream of good topic suggestions. So Kasey just said, hey, future guest, somebody to talk about bedside singing groups. I love that. Until I started doing this work, I didn't know that they existed, and I think it's a wonderful thing. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate Patient Choices Vermont for hosting this series and sort of making a forum where we can all get together and talk about all of these different things. So I really appreciate you guys having us on today, and all of you for bringing these amazing questions. I love presentations like this, mostly for connecting with all of you. So thank you.